The practice. A simple spiritual grounding practice for emotional waves. By the time most people go looking for a practice, they are already tired. Not curious tired, but exhausted tired. Tired of trying to manage themselves. Tired of looping thoughts. Tired of feeling like their inner life needs constant supervision. Tired of practices that feel like another thing to get right. Another metric. Another failure if it doesn't work fast enough. So before offering anything that even resembles a practice, it matters to say this clearly. What follows is not a technique to control your emotions. It is not a strategy to calm yourself down on command. It is not a performance of spirituality. It is not something you do to yourself. It is a way of staying with yourself. That distinction matters more than it might seem. Because the moment a practice becomes about control, the nervous system hears pressure. And pressure, even gentle pressure, can quietly recreate the very conditions that keep emotional waves loud. What the system responds to instead is companionship, presence, a sense that it is not alone with what it feels. Many ancient traditions understood this intuitively. Long before neuroscience had language for regulation, spiritual paths taught forms of prayer, attention, and embodiment that were less about mastery and more about abiding. In Christian mysticism, there is the idea of keeping vigil, staying awake with what is. In Buddhist practice, there is the instruction to sit with experience as it arises, neither clinging nor pushing away. In contemplative Judaism, there are practices of returning to the felt sense of breath and blessing the present moment as it is. These were not productivity tools, they were relational gestures. This practice belongs to that lineage. It is designed for emotional waves, not the small ripples you can easily distract yourself from, but the moments when something rises and asks for your full attention. The moments when you feel the familiar tightening, sinking, buzzing, heaviness, heat, numbness, or restlessness. The moments when your mind wants to rush in and explain, solve, narrate, or escape. When a wave comes, the first instinct is usually to go into the story. Why am I feeling this? What does this mean? What should I do? How long will this last? Those questions feel reasonable, but they often pull you further away from your body and deeper into mental agitation. They also assume that the feeling is a problem that needs an answer, rather than an experience that needs presence. So the first movement of this practice is very simple and very countercultural. You place awareness in the body, not the story. This doesn't require you to do anything dramatic. You don't need to close your eyes if that feels unsafe. You don't need to sit in a special posture. You don't need to breathe in a particular way. You simply allow your attention to drop out of the mental narrative and into physical sensation. You might notice where the feeling is most alive. It could be in your chest, your throat, your belly, your jaw, your shoulders, your face. It could be a diffuse heaviness or a sharp edge. It could feel like pressure, fluttering, constriction, warmth, or emptiness. You are not trying to change it. You are simply noticing. This is where it lives right now. This matters because sensation anchors you in the present moment. The body only lives now. Even when it reacts to the past, it does so in the present. By bringing awareness to sensation, you gently interrupt the endless time travel of the mind. You stop rehearsing the past and forecasting the future. You come into contact with what is actually happening right here. Jon Kabat-Zinn, in his work on mindfulness-based stress reduction, often emphasizes that awareness itself can be healing when it is non-judgmental and embodied. He speaks about coming to the senses as a way of returning to life as it is unfolding. This practice does exactly that, without requiring you to adopt any special framework. Once your awareness is in the body, the next movement is equally simple and equally important. You name the emotion softly without analyzing it. This is not a diagnosis. It is not a deep inquiry. It is more like acknowledging a guest. You might say quietly, sadness, or fear, or anger, or loneliness, or shame, or overwhelm. If you're not sure, you can say something general, like something heavy or something tight. Precision is less important than gentleness. Naming helps in two ways. First, it creates a little space between you and the feeling. Instead of being swallowed by it, you recognize it as an experience you are having. Second, it activates parts of the brain associated with awareness and regulation, which can help reduce emotional intensity. This doesn't mean the feeling disappears. It means it becomes more workable. What's important here is what you don't do. You don't explain why the emotion is there. You don't tell the story of who caused it. You don't analyze whether it's justified. You don't rank it as good or bad. You simply name it as a fact of the moment. This is where many people go wrong without realizing it. They think they are being mindful, but they are actually narrating. They say, "I'm anxious because this reminds me of that time when..." And suddenly, they are back in the story, back in the spiral. This practice asks you to resist that pull, not through force, but through choice. You choose presence over explanation. After naming the emotion, you make a small, kind invitation to the body. You invite a longer exhale and a sense of support beneath you. Notice the word invite. You are not commanding the breath. You are not counting it. You are not trying to optimize it. You are simply allowing the out-breath to be a little slower, a little fuller if it wants to be. Often the exhale naturally lengthens when you stop pushing. The body knows how to settle when it feels safe enough to do so. At the same time, you bring awareness to support. You feel the chair holding you, the floor beneath your feet, the bed beneath your body, the wall at your back, gravity doing its quiet work. You may even place a hand somewhere comforting, not as a technique, but as a human gesture. Support is one of the most underappreciated aspects of regulation. When you consciously notice that you are held by something larger than your effort, your nervous system receives a powerful signal. I am not floating. I am not falling. I am supported. That signal alone can soften a wave. Stephen Porges' work reminds us that the nervous system is constantly evaluating cues of safety and danger. Support, physical, relational, environmental, is one of the clearest cues of safety we can offer. You don't have to convince yourself that everything is okay. You simply let your body register that, in this moment, it is not alone and not unsupported. Once you have awareness in the body, a gentle name for the emotion, and a felt sense of support, you arrive at the heart of the practice. You ask one simple orienting question. What is needed right now? Not to fix this, but to stay with it. This question changes everything. Notice what it does not ask. It does not ask how to get rid of the feeling. It does not ask what lesson you should learn. It does not ask how to be better. It does not ask when this will end. It asks about staying. It assumes that your capacity matters more than resolution. Sometimes the answer is very simple. The body might need rest, or warmth, or water, or a change of position, or a moment of quiet, or a reassuring inner phrase, or permission to cry, or permission to do nothing, or permission to step away from stimulation. Sometimes the answer is relational. You might need to feel connected, even in a small way. You might need to hear a friendly voice. You might need to imagine someone kind nearby. You might need to place a hand on your heart and remind yourself that you are not alone. Sometimes the answer is simply time. The wave needs space to move through without interference. What matters is not that you get the answer right. What matters is that you ask the question from a place of care instead of pressure. You shift from trying to dominate your experience to trying to accompany it. This is why it's important to say clearly, this practice is not emotional control. It is companionship. Control says, I don't want this. Make it stop. Companionship says, I'm here with you while this moves. Control treats emotion like an enemy. Companionship treats emotion like a part of you that needs presence. Control creates tension. Companionship creates trust. Over time, this distinction reshapes your inner life. When emotions arise, they no longer trigger immediate panic. You begin to recognize the early signs of a wave and respond with steadiness instead of urgency. You don't feel like you have to solve yourself. You feel like you can stay with yourself. This is where the gentle mantra comes in, not as an affirmation to repeat compulsively, but as a quiet orientation you can return to when the mind starts racing. I can stay. I don't have to solve. Those words are powerful because they counter two of the nervous system's biggest fears: the fear of being overwhelmed and the fear of being inadequate. I can stay speaks to capacity. I don't have to solve speaks to permission. You are reminding yourself that presence is enough for this moment, that you don't have to figure out your whole life while you're feeling something, that you don't have to extract meaning or reach closure, that staying is already doing something deeply healing. Tara Brach often speaks about offering a friendly presence to our inner experience. In her writing and teaching, she emphasizes that healing unfolds when we bring kindness to what is here. This practice is a way of doing that without sentimentality and without bypassing. It is grounded. It is real. It meets you where you actually are. It also respects the intelligence of timing. Emotional waves often have their own arc. They rise, crest, and fall. When you stop interfering with that arc, when you stop tightening against it, the wave often moves through more cleanly. Not always quickly, but honestly. You feel it, you stay, and eventually something shifts. The intensity lessens, the edge softens, the body exhales, not because you forced it, but because it completed its movement. This is why the practice has high rewatch potential. It is not something you master once and move on from. It is something you return to again and again, especially in moments when you forget, especially at night, especially when the world feels unsteady, especially when you are tired of being strong. And each time you return, you reinforce a new pattern in your nervous system. You teach it, through experience, that emotions are survivable, that presence is possible, that you will not abandon yourself when things get hard, that you are a safe place to land. Over time, this changes your baseline. You may still feel waves, but they don't take over in the same way. You may still get triggered, but you recover more quickly. You may still feel pain, but it doesn't turn into despair as easily. You develop what can only be described as inner steadiness, not the absence of feeling, but the presence of trust. It's important to say one more thing clearly. This practice does not replace other forms of support. It doesn't mean you never seek help. It doesn't mean you never process your story with a therapist or trusted friend. It doesn't mean you don't work with insight or reflection at other times. What it does is change the sequence. It ensures that when you do reflect, you do so from a place of regulation rather than reactivity. Safety first, then insight. When you ground yourself this way, you are no longer asking your wisdom to speak over chaos. You are creating the conditions in which wisdom can be heard. You are making space for your deeper knowing to emerge naturally, without force. And perhaps most importantly, you are changing your relationship with yourself. You are no longer someone who has to be managed. You become someone who can be trusted. You become someone who knows how to stay. That is not a small thing. That is the foundation of real healing.